What's going on, guys? The Comics Kid 2099 here. Today, I want to talk to you about 18 Days.
It's been 18 days since you looked at me, cocked your head to the side, and you killed me.
By Grant Morrison and Mukesh Singh. This is an illustrated script book about the 18-Day War from the Mahabharata, which is an ancient Indian religious text about this gigantic epic war between gods and demigods, two families who go to war over something. It's kind of explained in this book, and this is basically, at one point in the book, Grant Morrison said, this is Indian gods and demigods filtered through Jack Kirby. That was basically what he was going for here, and he did something very similar with a comic book with Philip Bond called Vamanarama, which was very different than this because that was set in the present day and it had different characters than what are used here, but kind of the same concept. And this was basically a really long pitch for this series, as well as scripts for the first 3 episodes of an animated series that ended up going on YouTube. And I had never actually heard of the animated series. I remember when this book came out, and I remember a friend of mine telling me it's very different than anything else Morrison has done. It's not a comic book. If you are going into this expecting this to be a comic book, it's not. The first 20 to 30 pages is almost entirely all text, basically Grant Morrison kind of giving you a quick update on who all these characters are and the origin of this big war, why they're fighting each other, and there's a whole bunch of characters that he gets into in the first 30 or so pages that don't actually show up in the rest of the book. And then once you get past all of that, it's all script for these animated episodes, and they were very short episodes. I looked into it a little bit before I finished reading this book. I think each episode is maybe like 3 or 4 minutes long. I didn't actually watch any of the episodes, but I was reading this kind of keeping in mind that this was a companion piece to the animated series. And from what I saw of the animated series, I think that this would have been served better if instead of them doing a script book and then doing an animated series, just forget the animated series part and have this be a really long, massive graphic novel. I think that this would have worked a lot better that way. Mukesh Singh's artwork is incredible. Some of the best art that I've ever seen, and if they had done this as a graphic novel, I think that this would have rivaled books like Kingdom Come or The Watchmen, books that people talk about 20, 30 years after they came out. I think this would have rivaled those in terms of quality and imagination and just about anything that you would want in a graphic novel. Unfortunately, the art here, or I don't know, maybe it is fortunate, the art here looks so much better than it did in what I saw of the animated series. I didn't watch a lot of the animated stuff. I just kind of looked into it just to see if it was the same thing that this was talking about, and it is. But I think that a lot of the detail in Mukesh Singh's art here is lost when you look at the animated series, which is unfortunate if you go to watch that. If you're looking at this piece on its own, the artwork here is magnificent, and I really wish that we had more of it. Instead of having the text by itself and then an illustrated piece that shows a particular scene, I wish we could have just had them do the entire 18-Day War as a really big comic book. But they didn't do that, and this only has the scripts for the first 3 episodes of the animated series. And I know that there are more than 3 episodes because this book ends on a pretty big cliffhanger. Morrison talks about a lot of stuff that happens in this series and happens in the 18-Day War that is not covered in the scripts that are collected here. And I saw on Amazon there are a few other volumes of this series, but I don't know if they are volumes that collect material that's not collected here, because this is a really big hardcover, as you can see. There is also a paperback version of this, so I don't know if they did more volumes that were in hardcover or if they did more volumes that were in paperback, and if they did the paperback versions, I don't know if they collect, like sometimes what they'll do a hardcover and then they'll do a paperback that only collects like half of what's in that hardcover, and in this case I don't think there would be any need for that because this is only about 120 pages or so. So I don't know if they just did illustrated script books for the entire animated series and you can buy like 3 or 4 volumes and it's basically all of the animated series. I don't know. I know that this only has scripts for the first 3 episodes and then basically the series Bible for the entire series. Grant Morrison's thoughts on some of these characters, kind of giving you an explanation. He compares characters to more pop culturally relevant characters. Bhima here, he says, is kind of the tank of the team, and then he says he's kind of like Wolverine. And then there's one character, I don't remember his name, he doesn't actually show up in the first 3 episodes, and he says he's kind of like Hamlet, and I was kind of getting a Mordred vibe from King Arthur, but I'm a big King Arthur fan, so I would kind of be thinking about that. But there's a lot of characters here. He mentions Luke Skywalker. He mentions Star Wars and Lord of the Rings quite a bit, and not really in a positive way. Usually, if someone says this is going to be like Lord of the Rings and Star Wars combined, usually they're going to be saying that, trying to get you amped up and hyped up for whatever thing that they're talking about. In this case, at one point, Morrison said, this isn't like those things where the good guys win because they're good guys. In this book, or in this animated series, in this story, if you will, the bad guys occasionally are known to do good things, and the good guys occasionally do really stupid things. And so he's basically saying there's just a bunch of guys here who are at war, and not necessarily divided up by here's the good guys and here's the bad guys. Although he does say that he wants to kind of westernize it a little bit and have the bad guys be a little bit demonic and animalistic and have the good guys look kind of pure and noble, which, if you're wanting to make the distinction and say this isn't like Star Wars or Lord of the Rings and the bad guys are not 100% bad and the good guys are not 100% good, then I don't know why you would want to westernize it. Go ahead and make this be as pure as it can possibly be and introduce this idea that not everyone has to be divided up into good guys and bad guys to a Western audience, which is largely what's going to be reading this. So anyway, I am not in any way familiar with the original Mahabharata, but I really like this. I thought it was interesting. I wish that it was just a straight up comic book because I do not enjoy reading scripts. I don't like the style of scripts. I would rather just read it in comic book form or read it in prose form. It would take me a lot longer to read it, but read it in that way. Of course, then you'd be losing the magnificent art here by Mukesh Singh. But if you are a big fan of fantasy and Grant Morrison, those are some things I like. I remember this coming out whenever it did, and I hesitated for a really long time on buying it, and I don't regret buying it now, but I don't know if I'm going to buy the other volumes, only because I don't know if they keep going with plot synopsis slash scripts of episode 4 moving forward. What I really like about this is the first 30 or so pages where we get to see Grant Morrison's take on the Mahabharata, where he's explaining some of these characters. I don't know if I would be interested if it was just scripts for the episodes that I could watch on YouTube for free. So anyway, I enjoyed it, and if you are a big Grant Morrison fan, if you like the Mahabharata or these other religious texts, there's another one, it's the Ramayana, I may be mispronouncing that. If you like those stories, then you may want to check this out, because it's a different take. It kind of does add a little bit more of a sci-fi bent to this story while still keeping it kind of pure to what I know of the Mahabharata. So anyway, those are my thoughts on 18 Days. I hope that you guys liked this video, and if you did, be sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe, and I will be back with more videos later this week. Have a good one.